victory and the agony of defeat.
Matterson, great ball around the corner, Penasini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me for what feels like our first non-live show in quite a bit is my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, we are just doing a normal recording this week with the preview. It doesn't really line up for a good live streaming slot. But how you doing as we head into round two where the Parramatta Eels will be looking to bounce back from that disastrous start against the Melbourne Storm?
So can I work blue and then you bleep it all out later? Is that the game?
Yes, that is the benefit of the old-fashioned recording. We can go code blue as much as we want and truly secure that MA rating that people were joking about in our last live stream. So, yeah, but it's good to be back as always, and having a slightly different format, I suppose, keeps things mixed up a little bit. So it's nice to have the live streams. It's nice to have the pre-recorded video like we have here. And then if you're out there on Sunday, 60s, it'll be nice to see you in live, or us, both us and the fans, live in person for the... we're not really sure. Do we know if it's a pre-game show yet?
No, we're still waiting back for confirmation of the time and also who the Eels legend will be. So hopefully we'll know that in the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll put it out on socials, let people know. People that have my number, just send me a text and I'll let you know as well, or you can DM on any of our socials, and hopefully we can let you know. But yeah, really looking forward to that. That's always been a highlight as to each Sunday or Saturday, whatever, Thursday night, Friday night, whatever nights, days that we're on at Parramatta Leagues Club. It's home of the Eels on match days, and we love getting to meet everyone there, and especially catching up with people who we know, and then meeting a whole lot of new faces as well, people introducing themselves to us and telling us, when the times of the day or the drives where they listen to the podcast. So that's all good stuff. John, what's the chances we can bang this out in about 45 minutes? We've got no junior reps to preview. We have got 3 grades of Eels matches. Let's try and we'll have a let's work on a little bit of a wager here, mate. We'll do it for a drink down at the club.
Yep.
I'm going to say that we come in between 45 and 50 minutes.
Ooh.
What's your tip? And we're not allowed to influence with
No.
we talk.
Don't just watch the clock and try and cheat. Yeah, I'd say we're probably in the vicinity of 50 to 55.
Okay. So under 50,
we'll
over 50.
We'll have a Coke Zero on it.
And interestingly, despite our ages, I'm declaring under 50. You're declaring over 50.
Yes.
So, which is the inverse of the age factors here. So, John, but as always, no matter what platform you're either watching this on or listening to it on, a subscribe, a like, drop some comments. We appreciate all of that. We try to get to as many comments and replies as we can. Also, a reminder too that we will go live with the news podcast at 7:45 each Tuesday night from now on. So stay tuned for that. Where possible, we will go live with the instant reaction, but of course the time around that is always based on whether it's a home game, whether we're doing a post-game appearance in the Leagues Club, whatever time we can get back home. You've got a longer trip than me to get home from the stadium, John, so that's always a factor. And by the way, mate, glad to see you're on the mend, a bit better than you were this time last week.
Yeah, the voice is still just a little raspy, but the sinuses have opened up, which is nice, and the coughing certainly subsided. So I'm not going to be infectious, I believe, on Sunday. So not going to be giving you the worst of it.
Shout out to Star Partners Real Estate, Melbourne, Narellan and Parramatta. So great sponsors of the Cumberland Throws pretty much since our inception. And as I said, see you at Parramatta Leagues on Sunday. They're great supporters as well of the Cumberland Throw. So, and in our 5th year at Parramatta Leagues Club with the podcast, how does time fly? It's quite incredible.
Every time I talk to you about it, I'm like, it's like our 3rd year, isn't it? And you're like, no. This is
No. This is the 5th year. First year was 21. And then 22 was obviously a big year with the grand final and all those appearances during the final series, even a dinner appearance on the Friday night before the grand final
week, yeah.
How was that? Like just about a full house in there in Jack's on a Friday night and talking footy before the grand final. That was just surreal to be in there that night with all the people that turned up to our podcast appearance. So, but anyway, we do need to press on. Just before we hit the previews, a couple of things that we did want to address. First of all, John, I'm going to address some comments that have been floating around out there about Ryan Matterson, and then you want to go into an injury update that's been released by the club. Now, there's going to be people listening to this who maybe haven't been sent the rumour, but there was a rumour that's been flying around on DMs, and I've had it said to me in person by someone. I've had it sent to me by multiple people, and the basics of the rumour is that Ryan Matterson's withdrawal from the team last week was just something that he's been doing for the last 5 years, where he has always seems to have an injury when he plays the Storm, and he hasn't played for the last 5 years or the last 5 occasions that the Eels have played the Storm, that he's reluctant to play against the Storm. Let's just put that to bed, right? So he's played the Storm a total of 12 times in his career. And since he's been with Parramatta, he's played them, I think it was twice in 2020, then every year, 21, 22, 23, 24. He played the second game against the Storm last year. There was obviously a year where he was suspended, I think, when we played the Storm first up. And there might have been 1 or 2 games where it was during an injury run that he didn't play against the Storm. So any stories about he hasn't played the last 5 times that the Eels have played the Storm, it's complete bull. Look, on the Cumberland throw, we're all for people being critical of players based on performance or maybe, decisions they make around.
Look at what happened on Sunday. There was plenty of vigorous discourse about, how unprepared we were.
Yep. But, let's have some, when it comes to these sorts of things, let's have criticism based on validity. And it's amazing how things like that get a life of their own.
Yeah, well, and the information here is not like it's behind a paywall. It's 2 clicks away on NRL.com or Rugby League Project to go and see, how many games Matterson lined up against Melbourne recently.
Oh, look, all you have to do, you go into Rugby League Project, put in Ryan Matterson's name, put down an opposition who he's played.
Lo and behold, you're there.
And it'll give you the rundown of each year that he's played a particular team. So I did that with the Melbourne Storm. It's as simple as that. It took all of 2 minutes to go and do the search. So that's not me holding any secret knowledge that I'm aware of. Like when it was both said to me and sent to me, I thought, no, I'm going to have to look at this because this is not right. It would have been noticed. And, there's all the rumours that, all this information's been passed on to Ryles, and, he's now aware what he's got with this bloke, and like all this horrible stuff that was just personal stuff. And as I said, I just wanted to put it to bed. Like, criticise Matto or any player about form or performance or what have you, but don't make crap up, or don't. If someone sends something to you, just check it. It doesn't take too much to check it. And I know that might seem, like I'm preaching or what have you, and I don't mean to be, and I apologise if it comes across that way. But, these things, they end up with a life of their own. And then people will go, oh, did you know that? And then all of a sudden it becomes like this truth that's lying out there that isn't the truth. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up.
Just a
John
couple
injury
of
list.
evangelical preachers at the pulpit. So the club finally got their round 2 injury list out. Better late than never. And no surprises, 60s Jake Tungor is on the list after what we suspect it might have been a bicep, but it's been listed as a shoulder and not specifying. They say it's a right shoulder stinger, which is not true because a stinger would imply that he was okay after.
He's a bit banged.
Incorrect use of the medical term there for the injury. So he's done something to his shoulder, and it looks like it's a 1 to 2 week turnaround. He's also joined now officially by Mitchell Moses, who was there but hadn't had that timeline established, and it's round 7, which slots right into that 6-week window that the club did announce. And then Bally Simonson, with his recovery from that ACL, is still due back in round 4. As we saw in the team list, Shaun Lane, Gideon Kautoga back for NRL, while Dean Hawkins and Hayes Dunster are turning out in the New South Wales Cup, so that tidies up the extended injury report a fair bit. Not present there, although he was there last week, is Richard Penasini, although he is not in any team list 60s. But we did have a little bit of mail in one of our live streams that he'll be out for 1 to 2 weeks.
That's about right.
And then looking to get back into the Flegg and Cup mix after that.
They haven't listed Luca.
And still no Luca Moretti. So we're pretty confident he's not in any trouble. We're pretty confident.
No.
We're pretty confident he's banged up. But for whatever reason, the club is not putting him there. So this isn't like some nefarious Asada or something like that situation.
It has to be that he's been overlooked just in the listing because he's not available for selection at the moment. So I'm not going to go into it, but I believe he should be on the report. So.
Yeah. So don't overthink it too much, guys. He'll be back sometime in the near future, we hope. But that's the end of the situation there. Maybe he'll pop up on the list next week.
Yeah.
So that is the injury report, which means we can then move to our first action. Like you mentioned in the lead-up 60s, it's the sort of like the safety wet round, the global buy and the junior reps that they have in their sleeves or up their sleeves so that if something does go wrong during the season, they can reschedule lost games, which means that all teams are off. So nothing to talk about there. And not surprising, but no ball players coming up to the Jersey Flegg this week, given that they've got priorities to finish out their season on top of the ladder, and the Flegg still got plenty of players available. So we start with the 21s in the Jersey Flegg as part of a mixed up, muddled up schedule, which we do love the old New South Wales Rugby League for. They kick off at Saturday, 1:00 p.m. It's listed at New Era Stadium 60s. I did get some mail in the week that some of the junior clubs have been told it was at Ringrose. But New South Wales Rugby League saying New Era, and they've been pretty consistent about that. Taking on the West Tigers, it is 4v8. I think 2 first start winners looking at those ladder positionings. Eels with their 20-point win over the Kaiviti Silktails. And then the Tigers, what did they get up to in round 160s? Let me have a quick gander. Jersey Flegg. That's not going to help me. I need to be on this website. The Parramatta Eels website will only show me Parramatta Eels results. What a shock. Jersey Flegg, round 1. The Tigers, they lost to Newcastle, so it's they had an 8-point loss. So they're in the 8 by virtue of the small amount of teams in competition. So there you go.
Is it a top 8 in the Flegg?
The way the wording was like implicit on the talk about the finals series for New South Wales Rugby League made it imply that it would be a top 8. I feel like so we'll have to chase that one up. But yeah, the shift to a top 8 in the junior reps. Maybe, but then again, you look at the Flegg 60s and Jersey Flegg here. I mean, it is still 14 teams, so a top 8, while it would disproportionately favour it's not half of the ladder, it's disproportionately favouring the ladder to get into the finals. It's not outlandish if they want to have a longer final series. So, yeah, we'll have to chase that one up. We hopefully speak to Steve Georgialis soon, and he might be able to give us some clarity on that finals picture. So, Let's get through this team list quickly. Eels, unfortunately, haven't named a full team list. They were missing 3 players last week. It's only 2 this week. We're getting better. Maybe 1 next week, maybe 0. But no one named at fullback and no one named on one of the wings, 60s. Instead, we've got a blank or TBA there. But the rest of the back line sees Bradley Avery, I assume, on the wing. And then Antioch Faitala Mariner reprising his role at right centre. Araz Namva Looks like he's going to be shifting inside one from wing to centre, and I believe centre is his preferred position, at least based on what we've seen in recent seasons. So that's not a bad move for him. No Richard Penasini there, obviously, so there's one spot you've got to account for. And then Arpa Twiddle was fullback last week, but moves into the halves because Josh Lynn is going up to, if I can get my finger in the frame there, going up to New South Wales Cup. So he'll partner Matthew Hunter, he being Arpa, in the meantime. So Twiddle and Hunter in the halves there. Front row, indeed, the entire forward pack looks like it's unchanged from that win against the Silktails, which means Damascus Nemia and Tiankin Brown are your bookends. Jack Hudson at dummy half. Domenico or Dom Destratus, Tyrese Lakini on the edges. Saxon Pryke at lock forward. Then on the interchange, Paddy Spence, Jalen Tawa, Raf Destratus, Dom's twin brother there, and then Yeti Samuelu, who I thought was quite impressive off the interchange last week. No named 18th man here, so there'll be someone there on game day for the concussion protocols, but no one named there. And we do await, because I'm actually interested to see what they do at fullback 60s. Arpa there last week, so he could still slot back there on game day and bring in someone else into the halves. But I'm just trying to think who he knows on the roster. We did see.
Well, I'm trying to think who actually played in the trial.
Yeah, against the Tigers,
fullback.
we had the there was a young fellow of black hair, wasn't there?
They had a couple of players at fullback. There might have even been two or three across the trial, because they did get a few players that got injured through the course of the game, and really the Tigers made it close by virtue of the fact that they scored once the Eels started to send some replacements out there with the injuries. And then I think, even though it was a trial, I'm pretty sure they only ended up with down to one on the bench. Such was the attrition rate in that particular trial. So, and obviously a lot was just precautions for that. So, John, the Silktails improved from last year.
Oh, physical. Now big and strong.
Yeah. So, and that's great. That's shows the development of the game at that younger level in Fiji. And they're all, are they now based in Australia with playing their games at Hammondville Oval?
It looks like, let me have a gander at the draw, because it might be a case of doing the half the season in Australia, half the season in Fiji, or maybe they might just be based in Australia. Silktails there. GI, so it's away. No, they go back to Fiji in round 3, it looks like, in Nadi.
Yep.
And then Sigatoka. So, yeah, they just, for whatever reason, they were located in Hammondville week 1. So, not really, maybe it was just a logistical thing.
Now, they're partnered with the Bulldogs, so is that right this year?
Maybe that's why. But I'm just looking through their home games now, and they all look like they're...
By the way, that was a question. I have it in.
I have to take it on advisement there, as you always see in your little Senate inquiries.
Because I think were they partnered with the Roosters last year? I have it in my head that they were partnered with the Roosters last year, and that they changed that coming into this season. So that might have been because
there is an announcement, the 3-year partnership with the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs late last year. So
I had it in the back of my head there was that partnership, and with playing at that Hammondville Oval, I just thought.
But that's the only home game they have in Sydney. Everything else goes back to Fiji. You've got games in Nadi, Sigatoka, and then a lot of games at Lautoka. Churchill Park is going to be their primary home venue, it looks like, throughout most of the year.
Okay, so in the news podcast, you talked about a lot of the players that impressed you. Who are you looking for a big game in this one? We've got Richie Penasini. He's out a couple of weeks with his injury. So who are you looking for to set the standard here? We've got a very strong pack. Front row, people should remember from last year, Tiankin Brown had a very strong season. I'm sure he took out one of the awards, didn't he? For
sounds right. Yeah.
Jersey Flegg. And then of course he got the run in the NRL trial against the Knights, We've got Saxon Pryke dropping back to that particular grade. Jack Hudson, who they've recruited from Queensland. He had a very good trial. He's got some raps on him from up in Queensland. The Destratus twins backing up again. Paddy Spence off the bench backing up again. Raz played in the trial. Very powerful outside back. Raz, he's got the sort of build you'd think he could easily play in the back row as well. In a sense, reminds me a little bit of Jordan Samrani in terms of that physicality and maybe versatility as well. You're expecting them to get the win here. Who are you looking for big games? And I should, of course, mention Josh Lynn as well as someone who's done the NRL.
But he's up in Cup, so we'll talk about him.
Oh, shortly. That's right. No, it's Arpa who did the pre-season, who is in that grade in Correct. The halves.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, just to go back, Tiankan Brown took out the Coaches Award last year in the Flegg, Saxon Pryke Player of the Year.
Yep.
Those two players obviously backing up in Cup this year, so they did very well there. Look, I hope I think the Eels can get the job done here, 60s. Obviously some, I say concerns. I do think it's just another clerical error based on the team list they've submitted to the New South Wales Rugby League game day portal. You have to think that the Eels do have ideas of who's playing fullback and wing this week. So I'll sort of let that solve itself, and we'll probably know come Saturday morning. They tend to do an update of the team sheet before the game on game day. Like when I say before the game, I mean like the morning of, not an hour before. Look, I sort of, my eyes are immediately drawn to that front row. Damascus Nemio, Jack Hudson, Tiankan Brown. They've done a really good job through the pre-season into round one, laying that platform. It was obviously very greasy conditions against the Kaiviti Sigtails on game day last week. And while there was some drop ball from the front rows, they also did a great job on a heavy track, keeping the Eels on the front foot. And I think that they can really build on that this week. And then, look, it's a well-rounded team. I thought that Antioch Faitala-Mariner was devastating for the ball in hand last week. Had a couple of errors in the second half that undid some of the good work, but on the balance of things, I thought he had a good game. Araz Nanva did great in his limited opportunities. Scored a nice try down that right sideline. He now comes presumably one infield where he can be a little bit more closer to the ball. I look at the back row. Dom Destratus was excellent. And he had a lot of sort of near big plays in that game where, cracked the line or half broke the line, and that next pass just either hit the deck or was dropped in the conditions. So I think in better gameplay conditions, he'll be dynamic there. So I do think that the engine room has a lot to do here between the front row and the back row. And then the player that you sort of mentioned there, and maybe it's too early to be, putting the pressure on him, but I would like to see how he responds given the change in dynamic at the club, is Arpa Twiddle. Dylan Brown is moving on, and I'm not saying that Arpa is going to be the first candidate to replace him, but the road to putting the tape on the field to be, one of Jason Ryles' guys in that competition it starts right now, 60s. And and even Matty Hunter, young half, he's got a lot to play for now. And these are the games that count. You don't want to be...
Well, what we have to remember, if they're looking for someone internally and they're not looking at someone who's currently in the top squad, they're looking at someone coming through pathways. The boys that are in SG ball or lower, they're a few years away. The replacement is needed next season. So, it's your likes of Arpa and Josh, who are playing in the halves in New South Wales Cup or Jersey Flegg. They could be next person up. And you have to remember the classic example of this is Riley Smith, who last year was Jersey Flegg.
Yep.
In front of him, he not only had the players that were with him in pre-season in Lussick and Hands, but he also had Matty Arthur in front of him in the pecking.
A lot changes in the course of 12 months in the NRL. So,
so he's gone from, maybe sitting fourth at best in that pecking order to his opportunity came during the pre-season.
Yep.
and we knew we knew he'd take that with both hands. I'd tell anyone who was listening, watch this young bloke go with an NRL preseason. He will make the coaches sit up and take notice. You knew what his work ethic was going to be like. But that's how much, as you say, that is how quickly it can change. So if there any of these blokes that are sitting there in the lower grades, even if they're running around in Jersey Flegg or even SG ball, that opportunity can come. Sem Tuivasa, he played the entire year in Jersey Flegg.
He didn't play any cup last year.
No.
And to the point where I was a little bit disappointed on a logistical development sort of timeline that he didn't get a chance to play senior football. But lo and behold, he had a big preseason, and obviously he's an absolute unit of a young kid. So he's got the physical tools there, the attributes there to play first grade. But he's come on massively in the space of just 3 months between the last we saw of him in Flegg and then that NRL preseason.
Yeah, so we're doing our usual trick here, John, of where we've gone off on a bit of a tangent.
Yeah. Look, I'm not trying to do it deliberately, but
that was my next question there.
No obfuscating here, mate. I'm trying to keep it on track.
So anyway, you're tipping the Eels to get this done. I'm tipping to get this done. I'm not going to talk about points or anything like that.
We saw these two teams meet in the preseason, and you don't want to read too much into trials, as we always talk about, but Eels acquitted themselves well there. They've added some troops, so I think they can get the job done. Although the scheduling is a little bit frustrating, it would have been nice to have these games lining up with our home opener at CommBank. So we always complain about that. Moving on, those 60s to Sunday, 1:00 p.m. at Ringrose Park. Originally slated at 2:00, so this one's been brought forward. Makes it a little bit easier for fans that want to get out to both venues, both Ringrose and CommBank. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be us if there is a pre-game out at the Leagues Club, so we'll keep you posted on that one though. But it's the Eels versus the Tigers by way of the Western Suburbs Magpies. That's how they are branded in the reserve grade. And the Eels look like this. Actually got a full team list, which is very nice. We got Joash Papali at fullback. Hayes Dunster makes his return from injury on the wing. Based on what we've seen from Hayes, he'd be on the left, I guess. But Artie played left in the preseason trial, so
I think Hayes played right.
Hayes all right? Yep, okay. So, and that puts Artie on the left there. Samuel Luizu and Alfred Smalley in the centres. Eels obviously looking a little bit skinny there in their backline depth with Addo Carr and Bowie Simonson due back in the very near future, but obviously no Jake Tungor, no Richie Penasini, and arguably another slot in that top 30, as Mark O'Neill spoke to us about, that was sort of pointed towards being a potential backline acquisition there. In the halves, though, we spoke about him earlier. Josh Lynn comes up into senior football this week. He'll partner Dean Hawkins, who makes his return from injury. And like we alluded to in the news podcast 60s, some curious selections here on the basis of our top 30 mandates to play inside the NRL. But I imagine the Eels have pleaded or made their case to the NRL that throwing guys like Hayes Dunster and Dean Hawkins into the first grade arena without any football under their belts is not exactly fair, and it seems like they've successfully done that. To the front row and to the forward pack in general, there's a lot of NRL experience. Wiramu Greg and Ryan Matterson line up at prop, Joey Lussick at dummy half. Kelma Tuolangi dropped, and deservedly so after what we saw against Melbourne. He now begins his road towards redemption with hopefully a big game against the Magpies. He'll be on one edge, Bryce Cartwright on the other. Charlie Geimer likewise dropped from first grade last week. He starts at lock forward. Manny Luke, Will Latu, Brock Parker, and Tony Mattelli are on the bench. We know what Manny does. He's a very solid reserve grade dummy half, but pretty excited about the rest of that bench 60s. Will Latu, one of the preseason standouts in the trials. Brock Parker, a rock solid player who he's exactly the sort of player that the Melbourne Storm systems love. And I'm sort of sitting here hoping that with Ryles on board, that can be the sort of player that flourishes for us and gives us some value. And then Tony Mattelli, probably the biggest loser from all the guys getting dropped from first grade this week, 60s. Was a projected cup starter, I reckon, probably as early as Saturday or even Sunday, 4:00 p.m., 5 minutes before kickoff. And then suddenly that happened, and there's a lot of NRL players back in Reggie's this week having to take the hard road back to first grade.
I reckon it'd be a good study to if someone had the records at just the touch of a button, but I don't recall ever seeing a more experienced pack of forwards in the one team in New South Wales Cup in memory. Maybe there's a bias with all the names being so familiar to us, but that and of course, Charlie hasn't had too many first grade games there, but that's a that's a pack of forwards that
should dominate.
We're all playing at some stage last year in first grade,
and the reality is they should dominate this game.
Yeah, they should be laying a platform that is, the other team can't match. But rugby league isn't played on paper.
No,
and the particular players are playing New South Wales Cup for a reason. Look, I have to tip them to win based on that level of experience. But there's some players out there like Heath Mason. He's a live wire for the Tigers.
Latu Fone.
Yes.
Kit Laulili is another one of our stars from the SG Ball, that junior class. Tony Suka. So yeah, there's if you've been following along in the junior reps, there's some recognisable names there on the Western Suburbs side of the ledger. Alex Lobb and Josh Feldy came from other clubs, from the Dragons and Manly respectively, but they've been big acquisitions. Solomon Afar-Tape had a good preseason in the trials, so the Tigers, or the Magpies in this case, they've got some strike there. They're definitely going to put up a stiff opposition, a stiff resistance, and the Eels cannot take this one for granted whatsoever. But in saying that, if they don't get the job done, I will be disappointed. 60s with the NRL experience in the pack with Dean Hawkins. I know he's had a disrupted preseason at the end of it towards a trial, so he's not exactly in full gear here. But with the experience he brings into the halves, I would hope that they can game manage this one to a reasonable victory.
Yeah, did see Mitch Moses spending a bit of time with him at training this week, just with a bit of guidance about his game and a bit of advice. So and I really do think it's a case of there's some players that are playing New South Wales Cup this week that if there was no New South Wales Cup game, they still wouldn't be in line for selection in NRL.
I mean, that's evident, isn't it?
They're still in their journey back. Yeah, they're still in their journey back from rehab. And as has often been the case, it's really always been the case in rugby league that players might work their way back through lower grades, and I think that's the wise thing here for the Eels as well. Because of simply as well because of the numbers of players that were in the same boat where they're coming back from injury. Last week there were 9 players unavailable for selection. A number of them are playing their first game this week. You don't want to rush them back. So, you don't want them under the pressure cooker of NRL. If they're still, if they're like at 90 or 95%, no, we want them at 100%, these players. So, okay, so we're both going for the Eels there in this one, and that's of course based on a little bit of our bias, but also the team that the Eels are able to trot out this week in New South Wales Cup, which now brings us to the big game, John.
Yeah, 4:05 p.m. kickoff out at CommBank Stadium. It's the home opener for the Eels in round 2. Eels taking on the West Tigers.
No curtain raiser.
No curtain raiser. Really disappointing. With Flegg and Cup right there, we're not privy to the stadium management's policies on the turf and the state of the turf. So that could be a factor here. But it does suck, doesn't it, 60s, to have a season opener at home and you just got the one game. It doesn't feel right. So
no, especially on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, the perfect recipe for a family day at the football.
Maybe more of a reason to get into the home of the Eels Parramatta Leagues and enjoy a beer and a feed before that. Have a listen maybe to the Cumberland Throw podcast. That is the case. I mean, the ground's probably going to be, I don't know what time the gates are open there, but It will obviously open before the first grade kicks off. But yeah, very, very disappointing. And as you say, we know that there's going to be increased traffic with extra NRL games being staged there this year, with the Panthers using it as home ground and the Tigers playing some games there. But come on, seriously, if you're really keen to see the New South Wales Cup live, you basically have to head over to Ringrose Park at what is it, a 1 o'clock kickoff?
1 o'clock, which means you're not getting a spot in the car park at Parramatta.
No. At best, you're probably getting back to Parramatta about 3:30, like that. So theoretically, you can do it, but no one wants to be like making that late charge to try and find parking on what will no doubt be a large crowd first up at CommBank Stadium. We've got the active supporter bay, the Swarm. By the way, if people want to get involved with them, just get in touch with the club. But the active supporter bay will be trying to rev up the crowd with as much noise as they can. We obviously want to turn the stadium into a fortress this year. Nothing quite compared to that very first game at the stadium when the Eels walloped the Tigers back in 2019. If we get a great, exciting game, the crowd will bring that atmosphere again. But John, time to run through the team list.
Yeah, Tigers, the Eels, meanwhile, we did get some guys back, but nothing like a Mitchell Moses coming back in the lineup to electrify the team. Instead, it's the Tigers who get the big ins. Api Coruscant and Jareem Buller back this week. Of course. Yeah. Which means they look like this. At fullback, it is Jareem Buller. On the wings, you got Sania Taruva and then Jarrell Skelton. I believe Skelton was on the left in the trials, right? Because that's where he jacked up Charlie Geimer. So it'll be Skelton on the left and Taruva on the right, if I recall correctly. Adam Dewey showing his positional versatility playing in the centres. Stafford Toa, also back, so another boost to their back line there. Here's the other centre. In the halves, Lachlan Galvin, going to be a man that's going to be linked a lot to the Parramatta Eels in the next 12 months. But he's partnering Jerome Luai, who is their captain. And then in the front row, you got Terrell May, Fanua Pole, and then Api Coruscant. Back row, Samuel Fayunu, Alex Seyfarth, and Alex Twal. On the interchange, Talon De Silva, the dummy half, Royce Hunt, Jack Bird, and Sione Fayunu. Extended roster, Charlie Staines, Latu Fayunu, Tristan Hope, Tony Sukar, and Solomono Fa'atape. So a lot of those cup players that we just spoke about. And then for the Eels 60s, we obviously detailed this back on our news podcast, but a number of changes here with Jason Ryles not settling after that round one debacle. Isaiah Yongi holds his place at fullback, no surprises. Sean Russell will be on the left wing with rookie debutant Jordan Samrani on the right. Will Penasini partners Sean down the left, and then Zach will help Jordan for his debut on the right edge. Dylan Brown, he'll be in the halves with Ronald Volkman. Jason Ryles was never going to drop Dill as much as there was a bit of a pushback from fan 60s. So no surprises, he's there in the six. Then you got Joe Ofengahi and Captain Junior Barlow on the front row with Brennan Hands at dummy half. Shaun Lane, back from injury, comes straight into the starting back row, and he'll partner Jack Williams, although I believe they've swapped sides based on jersey numbers 60s. So Lane will be on the left, Williams on the right. Jermaine Hopgood is a lock forward. And then on the interchange, Riley Smith and Sam Tuvati holding their places after, honestly, really good debuts considering the absolute pressure cooker they were in. And then Matt Dury holding his place on the bench. I thought he was fine against Melbourne. And then Gideon Kautoga making his club debut in the 16, with the 16 on his back. Extended roster, Dan Keir, Joash Papali, Witter McGreg, Joey Lussick, Charlie Geimer. Grant Atkins has the whistle. It's a bit of an oof. Casey Badger's in the box, another oof. So
we love them, John.
We love them. God bless them. We love them. But yes, that's how the two teams line up. And you know what, 60s, this is an absolute coin toss. Both teams missed well in excess of 50 tackles, I believe, between their two games. It was not pretty from either side. And while the scoreline certainly looked worse for the Eels against Melbourne, I don't think that was a good Newcastle team that beat the West Tigers 60s. So neither team's going to be happy if their round one start. The question is, who bounces back the best? Who remembers how to tackle first? Who holds onto the ball? All these little Rugby League 101s, these little truisms. It's going to be a pretty parochial crowd, you're hoping at Parramatta. So will the energy help the Eels or will it hinder them? Who knows?
Well, John, look, there's a couple of relevant points here in terms of the form line that you just spoke about there. We know that the Eels were diabolical in that first half against the Storm. We had fears of it going to 80 points. The Tigers weren't diabolical, but their opposition wasn't the Melbourne Storm as well. The Tigers against a Newcastle team that were pretty average on the night missed over 50 tackles, and to me didn't look terribly different to the Tigers from last year. And the commentators were trying to talk them up and all that sort of stuff. But if you were a Tigers supporter, I don't think you'd take too much joy out of that game other than the fact that your differential was minimal. However, I'm going to throw in a however. They're big ins for them this week.
Yeah, I mean, the way we defended, Appy will have an absolute field day. And then during ball out wide, obviously going to be difficult to slow down if we have those same issues with our defensive structures. So, yeah, very relevant.
And what you're talking about are defensive structures, and I have to keep coming back to this, and because you know, I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but that first half, there was nothing that they'd worked for in the pre-season that they put on out there. Nothing. It was, you know, in the first set, I'm yelling out, "What the hell is this?" Right? Because we saw the Storm just stroll through in that set of six, just stroll downfield. No line speed from the Eels. No venom in the contact whatsoever. Literally rolling off them in the tackle so they could get the quickest play of the ball possible. You know, as I said, they were like 13 strangers out there on the field in defence. In attack, again, there was no structure that you could see. Not that they had too much ball, because they were too busy kicking the ball off to the Storm. So what we need is that energy from the start. We need a bit of mongrel in defence. More than a bit of mongrel. We need a lot of mongrel in defence. We need the Eels to hurt them when they're making the tackles, and we need them as well to not dictate how quickly they're going to get up. We cannot have the attacking team dictating how quickly they play the ball.
Yeah, that ruck has to be contested. The Eels have to get their hands dirty. Even if it means giving away some penalties and 60 games early on, they've got to set a tone, set a trend in the ruck.
Well, we were the cleanest team in the ruck last year. We had been for years. Where'd that get us? Where did that get us? Because if the refs were serious about cleaning up the ruck, there wouldn't be all of the coaching that's done at certain clubs to slow up the ruck. You know, it'd be, you know, the refs don't want to blow the pee out of the whistle. They could.
Well, they shouldn't want to. They shouldn't want to, because in an ideal world, teams are following the letter of the law.
Correct.
But we know that teams will, you know, recklessly push the whistle to the point.
Well, that's because if the ref's blowing the whistle, all the media attention is thrown on the ref,
about,
ruining the
stoppages,
content.
ruining the product. There's too many infringements, and so instead we get this interpretation where, and look, the good teams definitely get more leeway in the ruck, and you see it, and it gets very frustrating. So yeah, it's time for the Eels, and that's probably one of the most disappointing aspects of round one for mine, was that, you know, that Jason Ryles wouldn't have liked to have had a clean ruck, and the Eels went out there and just didn't contest. So that needs to be fixed up ASAP. And again, if you have to take some early lumps with the penalties and the 6 agains, so be it. But you can't let the Tigers get, I mean, guys like Coruscant, Galvin, Luai, and then obviously Buller playing off of them, they're going to be killer if you give them fast rucks.
Yeah. And of course, look, we had, look, there's no sugarcoating it. We had Kelmer being targeted by the Storm last week. So he's on the Eels' right edge, and they're heading towards him there. He was hooked early. You come back on the left edge. Where did they go? And just to make it easier, he's wearing bright white headgear to point out exactly where he is. So they'd done their homework, I'd say, quite well based on not just last year, but probably that Tigers game. And, you know, look, Kelmer straight out was one of the more impressive players during the pre-season. But, you know, as we always say, and we acknowledge, even though we're reporting on training, that the real test comes against quality opposition. He was found out in that first game, and until his defence improves, well, he's probably going to be working on it in New South Wales Cup, because he can be an absolute dynamo in attack, an absolute weapon in attack, but you can't have the defensive issues with it last week.
We talked about in the podcast on Tuesday, that alignment that allowed Ryan Pappenhausen to just plant his left foot and just go past him with ease. I get fearing Ryan Pappenhausen's speed to get around you on the outside, but he shaded so far to his outside alignment there that it was just begging, just inviting Pappenhausen to go inside for that line break. So got it all wrong. Positionally was terrible. Arm grabbing, low effort. You know, didn't turn around and chase. They're they're not even like hard markers for the coaches out to see, which is why he got hooked. So yeah, got to put his head down and figure that out, mate.
John, one of the things that I've been thinking about on reflection since the game last week, and as I said, it was an inexcusable first half because of the fact that it was effort areas that we were just didn't have offered nothing. But later on this season, we could expect that if there are key players missing, that like what happens at the Storm, like what happens at Penrith, if you've got all the systems in place, you can have that next man up mentality because they know their role, they know what's expected of players in that setup of play that Ryles has. Now, we were round one, and it honestly looked like as well that the players were almost like deer in the headlights. Like, what do we do now? You know, it's like, and I touched on the fact that, you know, when something is new and you feel like it's not working, you go back to what you used to know, right? And it felt like they were just betwixt and between. They were just when it wasn't happening at the start of the game, there was old habits that people seem to be, falling back into.
Defaulted to very quickly, yeah.
Yeah. So I think later in the season, you're going to see better from the Eels in terms of, like if you've got a Mitch Moses out or the like. There were too many out that first week. 9 out is just too many, and especially when all the systems and structures are new, like just brand new. So they're going to need to get over that up here.
Yeah.
This first week, this next week, they will. I have no doubt, because it's at home. It'll be a big crowd. They would have been embarrassed about last week. They will come out with a bit of fire and brimstone at the start of this game. But it has to go for the entire game. And I'm not saying that they're going to play at a million miles an hour for the entire game. That's impossible. But those effort areas, the non-negotiables, they have to be there. Like if the ball's hitting the ground, you fall on it. Don't stand and stare at the bloke next to you. Like, yours? Is it yours? Is it mine? Like someone make a decision on that. Move across. Like there's the gaps that were left there defensively when a player didn't come across, when one player was dragged across and then no one came to fill the hole that was there.
The try was just, ugh.
Oh, yeah, it just atrocious. I mean, they toyed with us. Like Munster toyed with us in that try. It was It was awful to watch, and Dylan ended up looking so bad in that miss. Look, last week people have been critical of Dylan at different times of his career, and the media's trying to push the narrative about how will the fans react and all this sort of stuff. And I'm hoping that fans just stay backing him.
Some people are going to boo him. That's the reality of the situation.
Look, that is the reality, right?
That's their prerogative, because it is disappointing to see Dylan go. But there'll be plenty that won't boo him. It's football.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But what we need from Dylan is nothing like last week.
No.
Last week was the worst game I've ever seen him play in a Parramatta jersey in his entire life. His entire life.
With the benefit of, obviously, hindsight, he looked like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Absolutely. So he will be better this week because, that he bottomed out
He's made his decision. He bottomed out. It's time to just play some football for Parramatta.
That's it. That's what we need him to do. Now, you saw last week, I don't know what the stat was, but I would say Ronald Volkman made 5 or 6 times as many kicks as what Dylan did. That needs to be spread a lot better.
Yeah, so just so the defense can't key in and put the pressure on Volkman. Different angles and different looks, and keep the defense on their toes, keep the back free from getting comfortable. So I agree there. And then for Volkman too, if he's going to kick early, he needs to communicate it better to his outside man. Yeah.
So, look, I think there's a lot of learnings that came from last week. The group, because the other thing you have to remember as well is there were players there who had some time training with the NRL in the NRL team when they're doing their scrimmages in those against New South Wales Cup, and so should know the role. But by the same token, there were combinations out there that weren't really practiced that much during the pre-season, because there was a whole lot of players that were expected to play first grade that didn't. So I think we're going to be better. We're going to be better this week. We will be better this week. Whether we are good enough to take the game from the Tigers, I think comes down to the mental side of it more than anything else. From an ability perspective, from a historical perspective, we should be able to do it. Tigers might feel the same way. First game for Jerome Luai, he'll be better for that run. But I still think the Eels have got the players who can do it, John. And I think they just have to look for the same way that Newcastle found success against the Tigers to be able to get the result.
Quickly before predictions, young man on debut, Jordan Samrani. What are you expecting from him, mate?
Look, we know he's good in the air. He is very good in the air because he's a big body. And I think he backs himself too in the air. He's very excited about his debut, as you can imagine. But I mean, this, we saw how both Riley Smith and Sam Tuivasa responded. I guess it's a sign of the changing face of the Eels team. I mean, Dylan's going to be continuing that by departing. He won't be on his own probably at the end of the year with players who move on. The younger brigade are starting to make their presence felt. They'll be given their shot. I think he'll measure up this week. And based on what I saw during the pre-season, I know why Ryles has gone with him, because he spent some time with because during the pre-season, you have to remember that Hayes wasn't able to participate in scrimmages for a while. Jake Tungall wasn't able to participate in scrimmages for a while. There are a number of players that were wingers that were missing at different stages. So he actually got to have a run in the NRL team on the wing. This isn't new. This isn't completely new to him. It is from the match day experience, but in terms of the bloke that he's playing alongside, he's trained alongside him during the pre-season. They've got a bit of a rapport and communication happening, he and Lomax. So I expect that because he's got such a good mentor beside him, I'm sure he's going to go very well, John. In fact, I'm not concerned about him with his debut. It's like last week. I was
the rookies.
I was more excited about Riley Smith and Sam Tuivasa. I wasn't concerned about their debuts in the slightest.
It's the senior players and the core players that we need to see responses from.
Yep, that's it. Yep. That's it, 100%. So let's go with our tips.
You got to back the Eels, right, mate? Like, it's the home opener. They got humiliated.
We did last week. We did that.
I tipped Melbourne. I said it was going to be a close game, and I was wrong. I actually got Parramatta's points right, I think. I said it was a 20. No, I said 20-16. So I was 2 points off because Zach Lomax was a sharpshooter. Curse you, Zach. But yes, I got Melbourne wrong by an order of magnitude or two. So yeah, look, Parramatta at home. Obviously, you want a demonstrative, crushing victory after what we saw last week, but I will take anything as long as they're hungry and competitive 60s. They can get an ugly win this week. I don't care. So in that vein, it's probably going to be higher scoring that I'm comfortable with based on what we saw last week. So maybe in the vicinity of 28-24 to Parramatta. And then first try scorer, let's go off the rook. Jordan Samrani down the right edge. And then best on field. This one's a bit tough. Best on field. I don't know. I don't know, mate.
I'll come back to you with that. I'll hit my score and first try scorer and best on field. So I like you. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. Neither team showed the inclination defensively that you wanted them to show as supporters. So I think the Eels get the job done 32-22.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Neither team would be, neither coach would be happy
but I'll take it.
With a result like that. But yeah, I would take it too. I will go for Zach Lomax as first try scorer.
Yep.
And I'm going to double down and say Zach Lomax best on field.
Yeah, I might go to the left edge then, Will Penasini, who I thought was one of our standouts. So maybe Will Penasini or Isaiah Yongi, the two guys that, in terms of core players, stood up the most against Melbourne. So look to those two. So yeah, we're tipping a win. Although in saying that, it is very much a coin toss game. The Tigers got plenty of strike. Still hard to get a read on where they're at exactly 60s before that recruitment and then Benji in another year of development as a coach. But hopefully the Eels can bank a win here. And then suddenly, if you get a win here, you're obviously back to even on the season after 2 rounds, and you're looking forward to that game against the Dogs. So let's hope we get the job done. Let's hope there's no injuries. Let's hope the Eels can actually start the build. And on that note,
lots of hopes.
Lots of hopes. This is still there's still plenty of hope left in the season. So we're in very much in that phase still. We will keep you guys abreast of our situation when it comes to the pre or post game show at Sterlos. We're sort of tentatively thinking it's a pre-game show, but we're waiting for the official confirmation. So we'll put that out on socials once it's there.
Pre-game might fit in better with the Eels ambassadors, is what we're thinking, and also with there being no lower grades, it might work out for the best there. But we've also need to fit in with what the schedule is. Correct. Within the club. They might like to have us in Sterlos after the game with the people that come back to the club. Shout out, of course, to Paraleagues for that support that they have for us. There is no Junior Rugby League Pathways games this week across any grade, any team. But we'll be back next week with that. With thanks to Paraleagues. Thank you to Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Thank you to the people who are viewing in even greater numbers on our YouTube channel. We appreciate the support that you're giving us here. Please do subscribe and like on the YouTube channel as well. That it triggers all of the algorithms there as well when you do those sorts of things, and it helps us get the content out to more and more Eels supporters. those of you that are watching via clicking on a Facebook link, we are also exploring, putting the link to go live on Facebook as well. So we'll see where we go with that. John, fine job, mate. How do we come in time-wise?
A tick over an hour. So I suppose if we're playing the Price is Right, I'm the victor, but that's by virtue of being able to go second and having that secondary mover advantage. But neither of us got it quite right.
They used to have the yodeling man climbing up the Alps or something, didn't they? For
yes,
as you got the tip over the point or not.
Yep.
So, thank you again for listening. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.